Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions, 4 p.m. BST on a Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed Bella's show yesterday. I'm back here. You're suffering with me till Thursday, but more importantly, we have Steve Simonson back, and we have brought him back for in-depth part 2. We do these rarely because normally we get the entrepreneur's life, but it seems that Steve's lived an entrepreneur's additional life in the last couple of years. How you doing, Steve?
Good. Yeah, it's the second life. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm just going to quickly share to the groups. Do you want to give everyone a little bit of an update what you've been up to this week, and then we can get into your story?
Sure, no problem. Well, it's obviously busy leading up to Black Friday and the peak of Q4 this time of year. We have faced all kinds of challenges. Those things include logistics challenges and delays and pricing and currency. And our warehouses are full, and Amazon takes forever to check in stuff. It's really just been a lovely group of challenges. And as I tell, especially emerging entrepreneurs or folks not in the day-to-day grind that I'm in, this is what we get paid for, right? We ultimately are here for problem solving, and the harder problems are why we make the bigger bucks.
Yes.
And sometimes why we lose the bigger bucks. But either way, our value in the world comes from figuring out these complex issues and carrying on.
Cool. All right. So we did the in-depth, guys. So if you want to go back, sellersessions.com, you can go back for the history or iTunes, etc. We did Steve's last in-depth in 2 parts. I think it's just under 2 hours. Steve, I'm going to let you lead on this. You made an announcement the other day. I'd like to start there if we may. So you had cancer, or you were in remission. Is that right? Or you're fully recovered?
Well, yeah, I don't even know. I don't get too technical on the terminology because I'm not a medical expert, and I don't really care what they say. And so the announcement I made just a couple weeks ago, I don't remember exactly when, was essentially that I've had some follow-up scans after about a year of treatments, and they say that I am clear. That's the word they use, clear, meaning there's no active bad stuff crawling around in my lungs and my abdomen and so forth. And so, to me it's like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going off the treatments then, and we'll just see what happens. And it's good news because you can get the other words, which are you're not clear and it's getting worse. So I feel lucky and, privileged to be on the so far the positive side of the equation. There's, very few people in the infusion suite with stage 4 cancer that I was in. Not everybody's getting good news. And whether this is a clear for a minute or a year or a decade or a lifetime, I don't know, but I'm fine with whatever that outcome is.
Yeah, well, long may it last. I'd like to take you back, but I just want to remind people, I think it's melanoma, if that's the pronunciation. The survival rate is, what I read in some literature, is like 22%. I've had skin cancer, but that's nothing compared to what you had, because it was internally. Like with what I had done is just zip, like local operation. It's isolated. But what you had is where it can spread to the lungs, the body, into the brain and stuff like that. So I know that you're a private person and you don't say too much about this stuff, and you're nicely playing it down. But like you said, there's people that didn't make it out the suite, and you did, and it just shows they're still fighting the old dog yet. Yeah.
Well, I can. I'll emphasize the old dog. The fight. It's funny because I never really, I certainly wasn't going to yield when I made it. So I made basically 2 announcements. Hey, I got this problem, and it's going to probably impact my time, but what are you going to do? C'est la vie. And then it's like, okay, well, the problem's on pause or at least delayed. So, it doesn't really change that much. My thoughts about it, though, are, when you have the stuff inside, so you're right to make that distinction, so having I in 30 years ago, or maybe it was, no, I guess it was, it was 20 years ago, I had something removed from my forehead, right at the very center of my head. And if you look close, for those on video, there's a giant S-shaped scar where they had to take out a piece of me. Oh, well, I was going to go for Superman, but I'll take either one.
Yeah.
I like to be on brand.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the all the way into your problem. And it probably, has prolonged or saved my life by having that done 20 years ago, because now the treatments are far, far better. Once you get it inside you, it's not great. And actually for the stage 4 version that I had, the survival rate's more along the lines of 5% based on historical. But with the newer treatments in the last 3-4 years, it's extraordinarily advanced. Most people don't hear about the good news when it comes to those treatments. And I want to give credit where it's due. The medical industry has really, really advanced in terms of their ability to treat this particular illness. And so, again, I'm not even an expert on it. The first few months, I'd have close friends who would say, hey, well, what are you taking, or what are you doing? I'm like, I don't even know the names of this stuff. I formulated a plan, and I just dealt with it. And I always called it my great inconvenience, because if you have to go in the hospital every 3 to 4 weeks, at least once per time, sometimes twice during that time, then you would, it's a giant inconvenience. It really sucks. But there's people who have it worse, so I'm always lucky.
Can we take it back to when you discovered, what were the symptoms of, why did you get to the hospital in the first place? Were you feeling under the weather? What kind of things that took you to that place, to get to the hospital, to get that discovery?
Yeah, this will be one of those stories of Steve being obstinate. So I go to my regular physical, which is an annual thing. And this is a couple years ago. My regular doctor, he wants to put me on some sort of cholesterol medication. I say, I'm not taking that stuff, screw you, hippie. And I've had this guy for 10 years. He's a good guy, and he's looking out for me, right? He wants to make sure my life carries on. But I'm just like, anything you take has some sort of consequence. So I'm not signing up for that. So he says, all right, fine. You go get a heart scan, and if it's not all jammed up and clogged up, then we'll kick the can another year. So I go get a heart scan, and this is where you go and get a CT scan, but they tracks the motion of your heart and happen to shoot a little bit of my lungs in that shot. And so this took me a few months, right? Because this was not an emergency. And he came back, he's like, all right, the heart looks fine. He's still bitter about it, going, all right, it looks fine. But hey, there are some weird spots in your lungs, just little tiny spots that you should probably have a pulmonologist. I don't know, a lung guy, check it out. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hop right on that. So another few months goes by, as in the pre-pandemic world, you would know, and those who know me know, I'm always on the road, right? There's something happening. So it takes another few months, and I go to a pulmonologist or a lung person, and she says, hey, I don't know what these things are, but they're little spots. And if you've ever been to Phoenix, Arizona, sometimes you get this from, if you ever had a cold down there, had a flu kind of, you can get these little scars in your lungs. It's probably not that big a deal. But if you happen to get anything else going, let me know, and we'll just keep our eye on it. So there's no panic there. So another number of months. And by the way, during this entire time, I've never felt any symptoms, no problems. About, I don't know, 5 or 6 months after that, so maybe almost 12 months after my first scan that picked up the little lung spots, then I feel something in my stomach, and it's like, that's weird. It shouldn't be there, right? You just how your body feels, and there shouldn't be like a hard spot. And so I call my regular doctor, and he's out of town, and another doctor answers, and I say, hey, this is kind of weird. Should I come and get this checked out? And she's like, come say, come saw. It's no big deal. If it doesn't hurt, it's, they give me various options that it could be, but most of them are, no big deal. So there's like, just come in when you get a chance. So a couple months after that, I go in, and I could still feel this spot, but again, never have any other symptoms, right? Even the spot didn't hurt. There was nothing. It was just kind of like, oh, that's weird. And so they finally, they look at it and they're like, well, we don't know what it is. There's probably nothing, but you should go get a scan. And I don't know, have you ever been, at the point where you're like, I'm just so tired of this. I just want it to be over.
Yeah.
Right. I just want the mystery solved. And so anyway, I show up for a scan, and I can, like, I get various scans, and I can't even take you through all the number of scans, but if I skip through the scans, I can watch the techs doing ultrasounds or doing CT scans, and their eyes kind of lighting up when they're seeing stuff. And so within a couple weeks, they tell me, hey, the thing you got in your abdomen, that's metastatic melanoma. You got cancer.
Wow.
And that sucked. And I still had no symptoms up until that moment.
That was
bad.
When did it hit you? Did it, the big words like cancer there and then, or did you go away for a couple of days, read up on it, and it really started to sink in for you?
No, man. There is no greater echo than somebody saying, hey, I got bad news. You have cancer. You have a metastatic melanoma. Yeah. And this is not something you want. And tomorrow I've scheduled an appointment for you with an oncologist, right? This is the scanner guy's like, you need to see somebody tomorrow. And it was already 5 or 6 o'clock that day. So to me, that was sending all the panic signals that one would send. And I was, not thrilled.
Yeah.
You start with why, right? It's like, well, how? I get scanned all the time, right? I go to dermatologists every 6 to 12 months to get scans to avoid this problem for the last 20 years, right? Since my little forehead. So I was not thrilled and didn't like it one bit.
How did it for your family? What was their reaction? Because look, let's be straight. When I see you at events, you're cool, collective. You work at a very high level with all your businesses. You're no nonsense. That's what I love about you. But everyone, you got the exterior and you got the interior as well. And I know that as a leader in your business and in the space and everything else, you've got to be the one that keeps it on everything on a level. But how was it? What was the echo effect back onto the family as well for you?
Yeah, the truth is, like, I didn't want to tell anybody anything ever. So just getting that news is not enough to go chicken little this thing, as I would call it. And so, and by the way, I like to think that I'm I don't take anything seriously. I actually do. I try to be professional but silly at the same time, if there is such a possibility. So, I just looked at this and said, I don't even know what the situation is. Just because they say I have this, that particular guy doesn't know the stage, doesn't know the outcome, can't give me a prognosis. And I actually have a very, I don't know, this is where the calm part of me comes in. If I don't know anything, what's the point of me worst casing every scenario or best casing every scenario? I have no data. So I'm going to wait for the data. And so I waited patiently the next morning, because the guy said he set up an appointment, or he's setting up an appointment. And I'm just sitting there waiting to find out where I'm supposed to go. Like, I don't even know where I'm going or who I'm meeting with. And around 1 o'clock, after I've been up for many, many hours, a doctor's office calls me and go, hey, you didn't bother showing up. Are you still coming in? I'm like, well, I'm happy to come in right now. I just don't know who you are, where you are. And so they told me, and that doctor, I mean, if you think I'm calm, man, he is like, man, he's super calm. He was very good to just kind of take the fear out of it. Never saying anything reassuring, but just saying it's also not we don't know anything yet. Let's just work this thing as a program and figure it out. So that was, it was hard times. And even at that moment, you still don't know what it is, right? Now you have to do biopsies and all this other nonsense. I hate all that stuff. Yeah, it's terrible.
So from my understanding as well, throughout the process, I mean, did you, before we get in there, I know that you drove yourself to all your appointments and stuff, and you didn't seem, in terms of your recovery, did you have a lot of side effects from the chemotherapy and stuff, or was that quite not pleasant, but it was just surprising? It wasn't as bad as you maybe considered.
Yeah. So the thing is, once they finally, so they did the biopsies, they actually had to do lung biopsies and the abdomen, which, by the way, don't get a lung biopsy unless you really need it, right? I need it. It's a nightmare. It's stupid. And you don't want to know how it's done, but it ain't great. And I'm awake the entire time. And they tell me to hold my breath. That's all I'll leave you with. So they basically confirmed it's the same thing. And basically, once it's in more than one place, now you're stage 4. Right. So this is where you go from, hey, it's stage 1, we're going to whack that thing out and, keep an eye on you, to stage 4. Like, we can't even whack this stuff out. There's trouble. There's trouble ahead. And so this is the point where I actually decided to tell my family, right? It's like, okay, well, I didn't want to tell anybody anything. I wouldn't have, in hindsight now, I wouldn't have told anybody anything if I knew that I would, still be kicking. But I didn't know at that moment. And I never felt any symptoms, and I never felt any side effects from the chemo. My version of chemotherapy was immunotherapy, which is a lower impact for my specific illness. And now I do have, I mean, if you see me in person, you'll see I have different spots on my skin where the chemo or the immunotherapy has tried to take the melanin out of me. And so, and I have little white spots in my hair and things like that. I am getting old, but they say those are some of the things, but I don't feel bad. And that's ultimately when I told my family and I told my partners, all before I told anybody public. And then I realized after I told them, well, first of all, when I told them, I didn't want them to panic.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I feel fine. Until I don't feel fine, let's not worry about it. Right. Yeah. I literally feel fine. So why should we send ourselves off into worst case scenario land? And they coped reasonably well. Obviously, not everyone copes the same way. And it was a lot of hard conversations. I'll be honest. I didn't like that one bit, but I didn't.
Did you get also some people like in my family, you get the Google doctors as well. So like you don't want to talk about certain things, and then it comes. Well, I've read through this, and if you did this, and you take this natural route and all that kind of stuff. So
luckily my family was reasonable at holding back on that. Although I'm more open to them weighing in, but when I announced publicly, mostly to say, hey, I normally deal with dozens of people a week trying to help them or interacting with them. And I'm just not going to have time for that. I'm divesting from some businesses and I'm really trying to get my ducks in a row. Right. I literally don't know how long I'll be walking around. And that's when the flood of ideas, well, listen, if you do jumping jacks and then you bow to the sun 3 times and it just all kinds of things that were all well intended and on that level appreciated, but wildly not helpful, and I ignored entirely.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if you'd go public with it, and I was surprised when you did, because I said like you're a private person, and I suppose as well is that as a human being is that you don't want also for people to feel sorry for you. There's that part of it, didn't you? If you're not looking for sympathy from people, and you just want to get on, you want to run your business, you want to look after your team, but you don't want necessarily your team to look at you in a different way because you're got cancer or whatever illness that someone has. So that's part of the reason I think, you want to keep stuff to yourself. So there's always that inner debate. Do you let people know? When do you let people know? And what kind of reaction you're going to get? So going back to, did you start putting the bucket list together? Because I see you doing a bit of traveling. You come on the show a few times, didn't you? You went off for a couple of months. Did you decide to reevaluate things in that period?
To some extent, for sure. But I kind of knew as early as August of last year. And I told my family in maybe end of September of last year, and I told the public in October of last year. Yeah. And so but during that time, even before my kids knew, I took them to Europe. Then we went on this, actually right after the public announcement, we went on, a 3-week thing to Hong Kong and China. And, we had the opportunity to, me and my kids have been to all the Disneylands except Japan, which we would have got if it wasn't for this dang pandemic. So, I wouldn't call it bucket list per se, but we were certainly, I was trying to make some memories, and I always try to make memories for, with my kids, especially, and my family at large. The reevaluation really came to, if I'm doing something that I hate, why? Right? I mean, mortality is limited for all of us. That's spoiler alert for your audience. It's coming for everybody. No matter what it is, we're all going to eventually die. And why waste a bunch of time, a bunch of hours, years, days, weeks, whatever, on doing stuff you hate? And so I've started taking steps to get rid of businesses that I didn't like. The pandemic has accelerated some of those to great financial annoyance, and but I none of that really matters at this moment. And so my focus has just been on trying to find things that I like to do, and things that I believe have what I call the network effect, right? I would like to help people be who they want to be, primarily entrepreneurial based, right? I believe in entrepreneurs. I think that entrepreneurs actually make the world a better place. And so me helping entrepreneurs be better makes them and their ecosystem flourish and better, and the world better as a result. So that's the main focus.
Yeah,
was getting out of things I hate.
And so with the businesses, did you step back? I know you've done some traveling, but once you got the news, did you make adjustments on the business side? I know you said getting rid of stuff that you hate, but it's still work, isn't it? You still got to offload those businesses, make those decisions, still be in that zone. But have you physically taken a big step back, or has it just been a small one?
Well, I tried. In some cases, again, we did full wind downs of brands and emerging companies that would have been, had the potential to be something. But it's like, it's just not far enough along for me to care about or to chase money after, or it just doesn't find satisfaction. So, I've been doing online business for a long, long time, since the late 90s. And I've been selling stuff even before that. And the truth is, for me, the satisfaction that comes from putting another sale on the board, or, making another widget move in terms of sales volume, is not super interesting. I don't hate it, but it's just not super interesting at this stage. And so, I evaluated those things, and I either eliminated those, or I tried to step back, or divested entirely. In some cases, I was a minority partner. It's like, hey, keep it, I'm out. But I tried to stay engaged on the things that I felt that had the most network effect possibilities. And even this year, I started a couple things that, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. So, I haven't stayed strictly on that trajectory of winding down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so over the 2 years, did you feel, I know that you're strong and everything else and you didn't have the symptoms, but is it a bit of a burden to carry? Because you're waiting for the answer, right? Because I haven't got any symptoms. The death rate is quite high on this. Do my symptoms get worse? It's not affecting me today. It's not tomorrow. When are they coming? Will I recover? Did you believe in yourself going, I'm fighting this, whatever it takes?
Yeah. I never had that type of conversation. I basically just said, listen, I feel fine. Yeah. I mean, literally, I've never had a side effect that is worth talking about, some itches here and there. I've never had any symptoms of the greater medical issue at large. But the truth of it is, there is a weight to waking up and going, oh, dang, yeah, you still have cancer, right? There is that problem. And I don't, you learn to live with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. I don't love that. And even today, even having a clear signal, I don't think that means you're cured. I don't think that means you're done. I think it just means we're hitting pause on this thing. We're going to scan, and if it comes back, we go back to doing what we were doing.
Yeah,
that's fine. You just learn to live with it. I don't like that. It is a weight, because you would prefer to wake up and go, well, I don't know how I'm going to die, but I'm going to just live as I can until then. And I take that route either way, but the chances are higher that cancer will claim me at one time or another.
Yeah.
Just because of my history. But I don't know if that'll be the case. I could get whacked by a bus today. I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of possibilities.
In true.
All optimistic.
So what are you, do you have, like, I mean, you're a very successful business owner across multiple business and stuff. Is there any big things that you want to hit? Is there stuff, I know you want to help entrepreneurs, but do you have like one of them big audacious kind of goals that you haven't tackled quite yet?
No, I actually, I have to say that I've, my level of satisfaction with my life is fine.
Yeah.
If I had to check out, I wouldn't say I wasted the ticket. By the same token, it doesn't mean I want to go anywhere, right? I don't want to be gone, and especially for the sake of my kids. If there was any emotional, turmoil and breakdown, it's with me going, well, what will happen to my kids, right? Even though they're getting older and they're smart enough and they're bright enough and they'll have some resources. You just worry about what happens to your kids, and so those, I had to deal with all of that stuff just like anybody else, and I also dealt with a few weeks early on where it's like, what's the point, right? Why bother with any of this stuff, and you just have to, eventually you just shake that, or you just, deal with it. But I don't look at it and go, yeah, I've got to get this done. I just say, why don't I just leave a life worth living? Right. That's my point. And that has been my point even before this reality check that the doctors gave me. I just want to live a life that is worthwhile. That means I feel good about it and I feel fulfilled. And those around me, don't think I'm a complete jerk. A partial jerk is okay with me.
Well, everyone's got to have their moments, and you don't have a great day every day, and work's got to be done. So,
yeah, that's just the way it is. But no, I when I think of this, I don't know, the lessons, I mostly think that having the clarity to say, is this something I want to do? Is my time worth this? That's super valuable. That it really is. And so, I have people ask me to do things or partner or this or that regularly, weekly for sure. And I have to say, I'm jammed up. I'm sorry, I'm busy. And that's quite true, number one. But number two, I have to pick what I want to do. Everybody should pick what they want to do very, very carefully. There is no point in carrying on and doing things that don't serve your personal why. They don't serve your business strategic objective. And I do think that entrepreneurs, myself included, have a tendency to get distracted easily.
Shiny objects, yeah.
Quite right. And I think if, my lesson is to try to stay focused on what I care about, what I want to do, and not get distracted by some of those things that are like, oh, that seems interesting.
What other advice do you have for entrepreneurs? I know you love entrepreneurs. You support everyone. You've supported me whenever I've got questions. And I'll put you in contact with people. You've helped out people behind the scenes as well. Have been in a jam and give them good advice. What's some of the things that you want to do to help entrepreneurs now over the next few years? Is there anything specific you'd like to work on, or what you'd like to see in an entrepreneur as well?
Well, the thing, as I look at it, I think of, it's not so good for me to tell people how to do things. It's better for me to tell people how to think about things.
Yes.
And then they deduce and learn how to do things, right? So this is a multivariable world we live in, right? So if I just say, oh, well, if you want to do this, just follow steps A through, F. And they go, oh, okay, great. That was helpful. But I would rather my focus now, or evolution, if you will, is to say, how do we develop critical thinking? How do we develop the skills to equip entrepreneurs? And so I support, as you know, the Empowery e-commerce cooperative. This is something that I've given a great deal of time and frankly money to try to help entrepreneurs. And really, it's the result of running a very high level mastermind for a number of years and seeing everybody have the same problems, right? At one time or another, everybody kind of goes through the same problems. So that effort was to say, hey, let's give everybody a resource without, it's a nonprofit co-op, so it's without any personal interest or direct interest for any individual, but it helps connect problems with solutions. That's kind of the objective. So I still, I'm trying to put my efforts into that, but my sister Melissa does really the heavy lift in there. And other efforts along that line to solve entrepreneurial problems in a systemic way are in the works. Catalyst 88 will have kind of what I call the CEO, I don't know, I haven't actually named it yet, but it'd be like a CEO university. It's like, here's everything I know about being a manager, starting as crappy and getting to competent. Maybe it'll be great, but I'm barely competent, and it's after years of training. Those are the things that I'm spending time on. I love them, and by them I mean entrepreneurs. I truly love entrepreneurs, right? A lot of people can say, "Oh, I love nachos," but they don't really love nachos. They enjoy eating nachos, but I love entrepreneurs. I want to do anything I can to help true entrepreneurs.
Yeah. What were the three most outstanding traits that you look for in entrepreneurs? Like, you meet entrepreneurs all the time and you instantly get that vibe. It's their energy, what they say, how they conduct themselves. What are the three distinct things, would you say, that really stand out for you when you look at entrepreneurs?
Well, this wouldn't be an official list, but this is the spur of the moment list. So maybe it's right by default. That for sure, it's a level of individual responsibility, right? Yeah. There is a buck stops here. If it's going to get done, I'm the one who's going to do it. And that is clearly a common trait with the high performers, right? They don't say, well, I've got to wait till a government program helps me, or I've got to wait till somebody lends me the money, or I've got to wait until, this lucky break happens, or the tariffs, this or that. They just like, I got to deal with it. I'll solve whatever problems, right? And so that can-do attitude, I solve impossible problems, that is a core trait. And, maybe most entrepreneurs can't even enunciate that attribute just yet, but it's very recognizable, right? Where they're like, if it is to be, it is up to me. That's step one. Step two is probably the concept of perseverance. Because being an entrepreneur and starting a business, running a business it's like getting on a long factory conveyor belt of people just kicking your butt, right? You're just signing up for a series of butt whoopings that are going to last the entire time you're an entrepreneur. In fact, as you were setting up and doing the lead-ins for the show, I just went through a series of butt whoopings that I got in the last 7 days, and they continue. And that's just the life we lead. So perseverance and the ability to keep calm and carry on is necessary at the end of the day.
Yeah, the analogy that I use is chewing on broken glass, swallowing the blood, and saying thank you for a couple of years until you hit cash flow. But yeah,
that's about right. Yeah.
But people don't really, not all people, but this is why there's a small percentage of the population, or maybe they're just mad enough to do it, right? Perseverance come through it, through strength and everything else, and maybe you need a little bit of madness to get there, which is you're willing to do what the other 97% or so are not willing to do. What's your third one?
Well, that is the third one, which is you will take risks that everybody else thinks are insane.
Yeah,
you will do stuff that everybody else goes, this is never going to work. You're stupid for trying it. I don't know how you came up with this idea, but you have no shot at making this happen.
Yeah.
And if that excites you and you're like, oh, yeah, you think that? Wait till you see what happens. And then you do whatever it takes to show them wrong and to prove them wrong. that is absolutely a third component. You must take enormous risks. And I'll tell you, you're not going to win on every bet you make. Now, I've had a long series of wins, but I've had a number of losses and setbacks along the way that would blow the minds of the people listening, right? And we're talking about staggering financial ruin to most people. And it's like, what are you going to do? Easy come, easy go. Let's move on, right? So you have to be able to, like, I'm not emotionally invested in my pride. I have been at times, but once that pride is, beaten down and trampled by horses, and you're like, oh, well, I'm still fine, and nobody actually really cares if I fail, except me, then let's just go. Let's just do it.
What about 3 negative traits? 3 traits that they shouldn't have, or they think that they should have because others have got them. I don't know, massive ego, bad attitudes, stuff that you would just want to slap it out of them. You go, look, you're a good entrepreneur, but this has got to go. And I think there are people, they do have them. We may have had them ourselves, and we've had to work through those. Do you know what I mean? As you maybe comes from experience and stuff. But what are 3, say, I'm going to use a harsh word, what are 3 traits you despise to see that would turn you off working with entrepreneurs?
Well, you touched on one just in passing there, but I think ego is the enemy of progress, right? Because people get into their heads that they're somehow, especially if you get a couple hits, right? Oh, I launched a product and it was easy. Next thing you know, I'm selling, 7 figures a year or whatever it is. And by the way, I have to say, not only is ego unattractive on a person, but it's quite unproductive. I remember giving a presentation to, 30 high-level entrepreneurs. These are people doing, at least, a couple $1 million a year, but probably if we did a median, they're, $8 to $12 million a year. And I gave them a talk about depression. I said, hey, entrepreneurs are more susceptible to depression. So this comes often as a negative result of, ego running amok. And within the audience, some people gave feedback. They're like, at our level, I don't think we need to worry about depression. It's like, okay, well, good. Elon Musk was worried about it. And I can give you another series of high-level people who have fought this particular problem. And I'll just tell you, so that don't assume that you're impervious. Don't let your ego run wild, and humble yourself to being wrong, for goodness sake, because we're wrong more than we're right. We're lucky.
I think a good, solid, hard failure, you learn through pain. And I think a good, solid, hard failure is a great lesson in life. I'm not encouraging it. It's not a, hey, like in the startup world a few years ago. Fail fast. You want to fail fast, but like you don't celebrate failure. No one wants to fail. But I've seen it before where you're speaking to someone and you're like, okay, he hasn't tasted or she hasn't tasted failure yet. Maybe when he or she does, that's when we start to see the real work get done. Let's see what their test of character is. But I think ego can be a problem. It can get out of control. But there's a side of ego which is everyone has an ego. They need an ego, not be egotistical, but you need a level of ego. You need self-preservation. You need self-esteem and stuff. It's just when it gets out of control, and it's something that you need to manage.
Yeah, it is a fine balance between self-assurance, like I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to show them that this is doable. And being able to check yourself and go, all right, well, first of all, and by the way, ego most negatively manifests itself when you are managing people. And it's when you treat people like they are tissue paper, like, oh, that's just another gig worker. I'll just get a new one, right? This is where ego runs amok. And that actually leads me into number 2, despicable trait that I have dealt with personally and had to overcome, which is trying to be a better manager. Most entrepreneurs' management is absolutely garbage. They really, as a species, we entrepreneurs are terrible managers. Terrible, because our brain isn't wired the same way people who like to be managed is wired. We assume that all of them want to run the company. But most of them just want to be told what to do, how to do it, have praise and have rewards of, finance or recognition and so on. And we're terrible at recognition, especially, and praise. We're like, well, if we had something to tell you, it would be, we'd tell you, right? That means you're doing a good job if we don't talk to you. That's a terrible management style, I'll just tell you. So that's one that I don't despise it as much as I lament that entrepreneurs don't spend more time trying to get better at it.
Yeah.
But where I see it the worst is that ego plus crappy management equals your people hate you, and that's why you have turnover.
Yeah.
And it's maybe even if it's not ego, you can still have turnover just because you're a crappy manager. That is at least a little easier to solve.
But I think that also comes from things like books. We know that what Steve Jobs did in the world was phenomenal, but he was also, I mean, I love his history, what he's done, he's achieved and everything else, but he was a tyrant. And I know he got the most out of people, but on the flip side, he burnt through people as well. He made their lives a misery to get a product out the door. And there has to be a balance. There's got to be empathy. You've got to show people some love, compassion, support them. And there is a fine balance there. But I think also is people read too many books. They read about these other leaders and stuff, and they go, well, I'm going to be like that. Well, if he's like that, that's how I should be as well. But I think it really comes down to you can't fake who you are. You have to be yourself. And so I think the ego thing is as well, people protecting themselves, they put on that falsity, and with that comes the larger ego, and that's where the tyrant side can come out of people that don't treat people as well as they should.
Well, I this analogy is relevant.
Yeah.
You know, Steve Jobs definitely was not a positive or a good manager from that standpoint, but he had some. There's only one Steve Jobs in this entire world.
It's phenomenal.
Ever.
You know, like I've got huge respect for him, but there was that side.
For sure there was.
You know,
but I'll tell you, for every Steve Jobs, which there's only been one in the entire global history, there are a million people who are better managers. And by the way, I guarantee you, in Jobs organizations, there were competent, if not exceptional managers at every level that tolerated maybe Steve being mean to them, but they didn't treat their people like that. The only way Apple succeeded, and other companies like that, you could look at Amazon or any big company, Microsoft, they succeed because management in place becomes really, really good. And by the way, being a good manager doesn't mean you tell people what to do on a timely basis. It means you try to figure out how to help them become better people and become better at what their job is and get promoted and maybe even grow out of the position you have them in. That's what a good manager does. Yeah. And I for every story of, you know, a tyrant winning, there's, you know, 100 times that, 1,000 times that of better people prevailing. Yeah. And so I would just urge you guys to be careful of that. And that, I suppose the third thing, and this one I really do despise, is the predators out there. Yeah. I see predators basically just lying to people like, hey, I'm going to tell you this big lie. You'll probably believe it because other people have told similar lies, and I put a little twist, and I'm even self-deprecating the way I tell the story. And so it makes me believable. And so just if you just give me your money, then I will enjoy it, and you will be sad that you gave it to me later. Yeah. The predatory nature of humans is, and there are some quote unquote successful entrepreneurs, in other words, very wealthy, that have been predators for many, many years. And that's not a trait that I,
well, that's pure narcissism. It's the predatory and prey, isn't it? Pure narcissism. Yeah. And there is a lot of it. And when you look at they're like, when you look at different industries, like I was in the music industry, we're in the entrepreneurial world, we're in the Amazon world, and you've got sports and stuff. That accelerates because you push them all into one area because you're looking, I don't know, let's call it a dominance hierarchy, right? So you're all pushed in. So everyone in life, let's just say for every 100 people, there are 10 of them got relationship to NDP, BDP, histrionics, whatever it want to be. I mean, if you look at the thingy top 500, the Fortune 500 companies, I think 3 to 5% of those are classified and registered as psychopaths in the past. So because that level, when you're operating at that level, and you know that dog eat dog world, it encourages that kind of a behavior. And when you compress that, them numbers change. So if you think across generation, there's 10 or 9 in 100, try and move that into new spaces. Try and move that into the music industry, sports, and all that kind of stuff, even down into entrepreneurship. Narcissism goes up, and it is becoming more and more of a prevalent issue. But you're right about the predators. The predators will their prey, and as long as they get away with it. When I interview for anything, I now look for narcissism. There's certain tests that I will do. I will speak to people, because people are good at doing interviews. They can be charming and everything else, right? And you don't know until you get them inside. So I do ask certain questions that I know which are triggers that will set off people with, even if they're on the spectrum, because the spectrum just goes like this, right? So you can go from 1 to 9 traits. Steve, you and I may have a narcissistic trait. Mine might be pride, but we don't have 8 of them. We're not manipulators. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem that we have, because when something's sexy and shiny, that becomes a beacon, and that light, power is very attractive to narcissistic people because that's what they want. Yeah. And so this is where it's very difficult. And you'll probably find in large organizations yourself, you put a few of those in the pack, these wolves start eating up the sheep in the house, and then it spreads like a cancer. And it's really, really important. I think it's very underestimated how much of a problem this is starting to become, where people can't just be themselves. There have to be a caricature of themselves and create a false self. But yeah, anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a rant. But
I think that's very well said. I have to just say that, the reinforcement of that point is, that movie, The Social Dilemma. That's all you need to see, right? That everybody is just taking pictures of themselves, on private jets or on the yacht, or, showing all these supposed moments that show how cool they are. But, so many of them are fake. So like that predatory stuff really boils down to people trying to get something or lie about something. I don't like that. And by the way, it doesn't mean people won't be successful, right? And success in whatever definition society might use. It doesn't mean they can't generate wealth. It doesn't mean they can't go on to, great things from a financial standpoint. But I can say that for most people, and this is the same point as the Steve Jobs point, he was clearly an exceptional character on every front. But for most people, you're going to find some level of achievement that is closer to Earth than the stratosphere Jobs was flying around in. I'm not saying you're not going to be successful. I'm saying, what if you could make a company that's worth $5 million or $10 million or $50 million, which is quite reasonable, versus $200 billion or $500 billion, or whatever Apple's worth these days. So there's a lot more of those people who need to be a lot more reasonable than the crazy outlier psychopaths that you just described. And that's what I would just implore people to think about. When they see people exhibiting behaviors of, oh, look at me, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, or, please give me money because my life is better than your life. These are terrible signals. And I think social media is in some ways validating that and rewarding that kind of behavior. And I would just encourage people to be wary of it and cognizant of these realities, and then make your own decisions. Really, I'm not here to make anybody's decisions except my own.
Yeah,
I have my opinions, and I make my decisions thusly as a result of those its experiences and opinions.
Yeah. So do you think there is a trend of it? And we've seen it on Insta where people want to be entrepreneurs. That's what they call that, their label. Basically, they're unemployed. But you see this generation coming through and they go, oh, that looks really good, because everyone wants to be called an entrepreneur. But when we started, or when you started before me, it wasn't necessarily trendy to be an entrepreneur. We were business owners. That was it, wasn't it? We just wanted to run our own business and we wanted to build something. There was something that we wanted to do inside. But I think now it's become very trendy. Why do I want to go and work for someone else? I want to go and work for myself. And then that entitlement and stuff kicks in as well. But it goes back to your point. I think a good good thing to spot, and this is where with narcissism, which won't happen, is accountability. They throw people under the bus, they're not accountable, they're manipulative and stuff. And if you can spot those people early, that is a really good trait to have as well. So like what you said there is one of the key things there. They must have accountability. Well, if you're that way inclined, you're going to have next to no accountability because you're not going to be accountable for yourself. But yeah, what should we finish off on? We've just gone on this one a bit of a rant, but
no, I think it's worthwhile. You know, the truth is, for me, how you live, right? And I'm older than a lot of our fellow Amazon entrepreneurs, right? So I've got more perspective and more experience. And by the way, and I've done probably everything that we've described in the show as negative. I've done it at least once. And by the way, probably more than one time up and down the line until I learned the lesson. Sometimes I'm a slow learner. So I'm not running around here going, I'm good, you're bad. I'm just saying, in my experience, the more you strive to avoid these things and attract these other things, the faster you can find your route to not just success in an objective way, but to a level of fulfillment and satisfaction. And that's the part that people are missing. That there are so many people who are working harder than ever. They have less time than ever. They're missing out on lots of things, life things, right? Making memories with their families, their loved ones, and so on. But what if they could have both, right? What if you could actually grow your business and have a life that was pretty awesome? That's the dream. And if there's any sense of ego for me, it's like I know how to do that, and I'm certainly not perfect at it, but I strive to get better at it continuously. And that, for my friends, I did a UK mastermind a couple years back, and my old buddy there, you know, we started, I don't even know, 10 or 15 years ago, working on a deal, and he was stressed, and he had all these symptoms of problems. And over time, you know, here it is 10 or 15 years later, he's now past 50 million quid, you know, annual turnover. He's got a huge company, you know, 100 plus people. It's growing fast. They've got investment capital, and he's not stressed out. That's the ultimate balancing act. And that's the point I want people to remember. Yeah. This is not about some kind of, you know, I'm trying to teach you to be a virtuous person. I don't care, right? I only care about what I'm responsible for, what I deliver. What I care about is, could you have a life that's pretty awesome and a business that's pretty awesome without sacrificing either? The answer is yes.
Yeah. You know, it's quite interesting. I've done a show. I've done about 6 of them called Life After Exit. Everyone that came on, and I mean everyone, not one of them went out and bought a flashy car or anything. I'm like, how does it feel? Yeah, we see some zeros in the bank. It's quite nice. Went out and milled bottle of wine. And it's really interesting. And it was a common theme. Maybe it's because of the people I chose and the data's not big enough. But I was really impressed about the way they are. Because obviously the pinnacle for a lot of people is the exit, right? And it's like, when I get there, I'll be happy. No, you've got to do the happiness now. You got to work out what your why is now, and then you'll be even more happier if that gives you the legacy money, the financial freedom for your family to go again, etc. And it's really, really interesting. Is like, in some parts, is like there's no shiny, sexy thing at the end of it. It was like, yeah, I was like Michelle Venton. Yeah, I was stuck in China with my buyer. We come back 3 weeks later, but you know, they bought investments and stuff like that, but most of them didn't go crazy or flashy. It was just like, yeah, this is great. And I think out of the 6 or 7 we did, they're all going again, all of them.
That's the point. Yeah, it's just a milestone. It is not the finish line. That really is. I'm glad to see that they have such uniform awareness that this just means they start the next deal with a little more capital and a little less risk. At least from a financial ruin standpoint, but they'll probably risk more money than they ever did before on the next gig. Yeah.
I'm going to read out some of the comments. Hi, Danny and Steve. Hope you are both well. Facebook user says, hi, Danny and Steve, legends in this space. Oxana, how you doing, Oxy? Steve decides to fight the giant inconvenience, and he did. Baptiste sends his love. Wellington, good morning, sirs. My mum and dad died from cancer. Sorry to hear that about that, mate. Please go see your doctor every 6 to 12 months. Good to see Steve is in good health. Our good friend of the show, Norm, is here. Got to love Steve Simonson, just a class act.
Look at that beard.
It's amazing beard. Should we bring it up again? What a beautiful beard.
What I mean, you just got to respect that beard.
Alan Gordon says that he is Norm. Alan says, hope you are well. I'm sure he's speaking to Norm there. Saibi says it's a lonely, long road running the business. So I guess you have to be a good friend with yourself or to yourself.
Let me jump in on that one with Sai. It is lonely running your own business. That's something people don't talk about. It is lonely because you're the only one making decisions. You get decision fatigue. You get self-conscious. You don't know actually the right answer, by the way, right? And so having that network of people around you is critical. Go find yourself people like you who are doing what you're doing. And it's really easy to do in this social media world. That's the upside of it. Yeah. And hang out with them. Carry on. Sorry.
No worries. Facebook user says, no better guys to speak on the subject about carrying on mentality, especially when you know nothing about nothing. Thanks, guys. You are the best. Yeah. That's the saying of yours. Cybe, goddamn social media. Can't we settle with just being okay? Hayes says, really like what Steve is saying. Such important points. Life is for living. I watch family members struggle to keep up with the Joneses. To impress who?
Screw the Joneses. That's my point.
This is a great point. And I think this is where we have to eat dirt for years, right? The problem is everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but they don't want to give up that corporate check, right? Most of these people, and I'm being respectful here, that I've seen and I've dealt with who wanted to do businesses with me and that cannot run a bath, let alone a business, getting paid 150 grand plus a year, but they're not willing to give up and back themselves to go into. And I said, do you know what you do? I said, what? You sell your house, you sell your car, you scale down your kids' education. Obviously you don't want to touch that, but if you really want to change things, you have to tuck the belt in. But there are a lot of people who are not willing to do that because they're not willing to bet on themselves. You have to go for years. I had to do it as well with my family. I had to put them through the suffering of less holidays or no holidays. You know, you're watching what comes in through the door until we reach cash flow. But now it pays dividends because my wife backed me and I backed myself. And along the way, we had a load of failures and everything else. And I think that is quintessentially, that's a key component of entrepreneurs as well. Like you said about risk, you're willing to not keep up with the Joneses. And then let's look at it. Why is it so important? I don't see any flashy stuff on you, Steve.
Well, I don't care about any of that stuff. That's the truth of it. And I also don't care what the Joneses think about me, good or bad. It's like, it just doesn't matter. That's that level of, freedom comes from not caring what other people think. And if I tell my kids that, I tell anybody that you only should care what you think. That's all you should care about. Be an individual, stand for something. And for goodness sake, don't measure yourself by somebody else's yardstick. They don't matter.
And quite often they don't even like each other.
Right.
So they're keeping up with Jones. They're keeping up with people that they don't like.
That is the worst part of it all, which is I find to be bitter and ironic and more bitter than ironic.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look, let's wrap here. Any final words from you?
No. Thanks for having me on. This is not a topic I would normally discuss. But for you and for your audience, it is something that, I wanted to share. And I thank you for the opportunity. It is, for anybody who deals with these types of issues, please know that, hope is a good thing. And I don't think about anything except, keeping calm and carrying on. So I encourage you to do the same.
Cool. Do you want to let them know about the podcast, Empowery and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, I think if you want to find your personal why, go to awesomers.com, join the mailing list there. You can listen to the podcast. We have 200 plus episodes, and we'll send you a free Find Your Why thing. Go to empowery.com. We're holding a Festivus event, Festivus for the rest of us in December. And there's many other things that I do and I'm involved with that you can find me on the interwebs.
Excellent. Guys, thank you for joining me. Again, I'll be back here 4 p.m. tomorrow. BST, Steve, again, thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing. I'm sure you inspired a lot of people out there today, and congratulations on your recovery. Take care.